There. Okay, now she can take the floor.
Okay, thank you so much, Hannah, and thank you so much, Lorena, and everyone here for staying and for wondering about this session. And I'll tell you that my session is called Maximizing Learning, but through a very specific angle, which is trying to understand Gen Z and Alpha learning. So thanks again, girls. Thanks, Storyscape, for this opportunity, and let's kick off. By the way, this is a conversation. We will be having questions, but if you have further questions, if you need extra help, this is where you can find me on LinkedIn. You know, you send a message there and I will reply as soon as possible. And we keep building this together. Remember, this is where you find me 24/7 because that is my professional learning network. And I do recommend having a profile there, but using it as a professional learning network because you get to learn. If you have a correct network of users, you get to learn about what is used somewhere else in the world. And thanks again, Storyscape, for putting together Buenos Aires and the world and teachers from all over the world here. So this is the first activity. Are you ready? Okay, good. Now, Jonathan Swift, Gulliver's Travels. I love the phrase. Which word resonates there? Does any word resonate in your case?
Vision.
Vision. Looking ahead. Any other word? I love this idea of what is invisible.
Yes.
What is hidden?
Invisible.
Revealing something. Okay, but let's see if we start revealing with a little game. I want you to compare, and you can use the chat for this. Let's see your imagination here at work. Let's compare teaching and learning English in this new normal after the pandemic and what we are doing in our classes every day with this. Traveling to unknown lands. Imagine explorer, imagine an adventurer. What do you see? What are the similarities? Any difference? Come on, creativity at work. You can use the chat. Compare teaching, as we are doing now, with an expeditionary, traveling to unknown lands. I love that. Yeah, it's not easy to predict understanding what's coming. So you feel uncertain. This idea of discovery may be good or it may be bad. Any other idea that comes to your mind? While you continue using the chat, I'll tell you one that worries me a little bit, which is, what should I take for the expedition? It's always difficult to decide what to take and what not to take. What is needed and what is not. I love it, Mirta. Absolutely. Coping with new events, with the unknown. And precisely this new normal is full of this situation in which we have to face unknown plights, unknown situations, and we have to be creative and respond to them. But we have to prepare our learners for that, and that's the idea. And when you start a trip, and tell me if it doesn't happen to you, remember I'm reading you, and yes, Lore, I agree, the fear that we feel when we are about to begin something new because of this uncertainty is this: no matter the number of roads you have, no matter the number of travelers, no matter the vehicle you have, and perhaps the GPS that you are using, if you don't get the signal, if you don't know where you are standing, it's useless. because you will be like moving in circles, or you won't be finding directions, or maybe the directions that you get won't be efficient. So the first point when we start a trip is understanding where we are. And this is why I think that the generational perspective has a lot to contribute, because it is telling us who is on our trip. And there is where we should depart, knowing our learners from this perspective. What do I mean? There are two new generations of learners. Generation Z, or Gen Zers, or Centennials, and Alphas. If this phrase, which is about 100 years long, older or more, was valid in the past, it becomes even more valid today when we think about Gen Zers and Alphas. We need to prepare them for a future, and we cannot prepare a new generation of students the way we were prepared in the past. So this is what I mean. This is what we will be doing. We will be maximizing student learning with a generational perspective. This is our plan. We will be moving from what works to what works best. We will share what we see in our students. We will see the whys behind the whats. And with that, we will be building somehow how to deal with those behaviors, those activities that we see our students perform in class. So here I have to quote Hattie with this idea of enhancing results. When we want to maximize, we have to be very sure that this happens. Whatever we think works, it works. 95% of what works has been proven to work. Now, our task every day, and this is the most amazing thing that can happen to teachers, that their opinion is valued and counts, is that we can discover in the class what works best. And we are empowered to do this. So I invite you, I challenge you to think about what works with your class best. Now, in my session, apart from learning all those or talking about those topics, I want you to take this takeaway. As I present, I will be showing a Z and Alpha oriented visual style of presentation that suits these type of learners, right? How we can present material in a more generationally friendly way. And at the same time, you will see that we will be doing some things that will help their learning. And this is the neuro-friendly aspect of the presentation. So ready for the trip? Okay, here we go. This is important. As in any case, you are the professionals of education. Adapt to your environments before you adopt. And by the way, bear in mind this. As I am talking to you and you're jotting down your notes or just trying to make a mental note of this, remember that it's not that you have to discard and start anew. There are things that you will certainly have to avoid because they are not generationally friendly. There are things that you can still do with caution, bearing in mind that they may or may not work from the generational point of view. And that there are things that perhaps you are doing and that are very generationally friendly and that really serve your learners. So ready for this generational traffic lights that you will be creating in your agendas? All right, good.
Yes.
Here we go. The first thing that we need to know is, she's talking about generations, and this is that she is me. What is a generation? Well, the concept is not new. It was about 100 years ago that Karl Mannheim started talking about a generation when he was experiencing the historical events of his times. And these sociologists started to see, and in the meantime, I let you have a look at the definition, that there were people who felt certain things because they experienced major historical events. And that is how he described the generation, people with similar ages who discovered or experienced at certain ages more or less the same events. The concept was not very much accepted, I have to be honest there, It was like revalued at the turn of the century when other sociologists started revising the concept, because at that time, a new generation was joining the workforce and people felt that they couldn't work well together. So they just like remembered this idea of generations and trying to understand how a generation worked. And they started discovering them and studying them. And these two sociologists, Strauss and Howe, added like a third dimension to the definition, which is when you belong to a generation, you feel one with others, right? And we always use the term generation to say, well, my generation or your generation. It is what keeps us together or takes us apart. Tell me if you have used in the chat the term generation in this sense. Do you normally use it very often? Do you feel that a concept such as, or groups named generations exist? Does it happen in your environment? In the meantime, let's say that in any work ambit, in any place where we are, there will be many people belonging to many different generations. And the same happens in your families. Mind you, remember that this is the takeaway, something that you can also consider. The generational spectrum today in different schools and universities comprises baby boomers, those born from 1945 onwards up to the year 1964, approximately. Remember that there are no clear divisions there, but we have like lines that spread. Gen Zers, my generation, starting 1965 up to the year more or less 1978, 1979, approximately. Gen Yers, and do you know any other name for Gen Yers? They are very famous everywhere.
Is it millennials?
Millennials, exactly. They are the millennials who started work by the turn of the century. Millennials have 20 years experience in education by now. The first millennials, definitely. After that, we have Gen Zers, those who were born by the turn of the century. Another name for Gen Zers? Have you heard the name Centennials?
Centennials, yes.
Exactly. So those are the ones that follow the millennials, and they were born by the turn of the century. And after that, and this is the youngest generation that is starting secondary school or middle school, come the alphas. And this generation will spread, according to Mark McCrindle, up to the year approximately 2025. But what is important about this and this spectrum of generations, and sometimes you have to find out where you are in the spectrum to see the generational distance that separates you from others, because sometimes you may be a Gen Zer teaching a baby boomer or the other way around. So it's important to understand this, because when we talk about generations, we talk about this. People who perceive the world in a certain way because of the historical events that they have seen in their formative years. And COVID is a great example of those generational markers that may affect the way the world is interpreted, the world is made sense of by very young students. So again, generations are the filters through which we perceive reality. And each generation carries their own filters, glasses, through which they see what is going on around. Are you with me so far? All right, good. The
Yes.
two emerging generations I'm going to focus on, and the one we need to know a lot and we can discover a lot together, are Gen Zers and Alphas, because they are the ones that are mostly populating, as I said, primary, secondary, and university. And by the way, Gen Zers are our novice teachers, our graduates, those colleagues we have to work, those very young colleagues we have to work with. So when we talk about generations, think about them as well, and think about yourself if you are a Gen Zer teaching. And what is interesting is their distance with technology. You know that in all cases, technology has impacted upon the way we want to learn. But in the case of, okay, it has gone, all right, let me share again. All right, here we go. We go from digital natives and not knowing a world without the internet to digital. Alphas are digital in the sense that they don't know of a world without a smartphone, and they don't know of a world without this. Let me continue with the ideas. Okay, here we go. Instagram, they were born with Instagram. They don't know of a world which is not visual, such as the possibilities that we have through Instagram, or as fast as TikTok. So tell me if you have been able to identify your generation and write it in the chat box if you want. Or if there is a word that has like struck you, the chat is all yours. Stream of consciousness. I have a Gen Y or millennial, another Gen Y dealing with technology in a very natural way. This is the moment when you can pretend to be younger, by the way. But then remember your real generation, okay? All right, so let's go back to this. We were talking about Generation Alpha, this new generation that does not know of a world without a screen. And think of Instagram. These kids have been Instagrammed from the moment they were born. And by the way, they are born to millennial parents. They have different heroes. The pandemic has given them new heroes to look up to. And from the moment they are born, they have developed this ability to, in a way, deal with the uncertain, if not think about the love toys, or this need that they have to develop to differentiate what is real from what is fake. And they use that. They tend to talk about, well, that's fake, in a very natural way, because this is the world they know. Those are the glasses they wear, and they don't know of a world in which things couldn't be made, couldn't be faked so easily. And by the way, time to personalize everything from what you want to do to your own skin, right? Of course, when we talk about generations, we have a big criticism, and I want to deal with this as a disclaimer. We are talking about populations. They are not stereotypes. If you have a look at the criticism, and this has to do with an academic angle, not many studies could be done to disprove this. But even so, we have to remember that there may be people who are standing in between two generations and they share the values of two generations, or people who feel identified with the values or the way they see, the way some other generation sees the world, because these are filters, and we talk about values. Now, I also want you to know this. We have all seen the attack, or most of us have witnessed the attack on the Twin Towers. But it is different to witness that when you are in your formative years and you are trying to make sense of what the world is about, than to witness an attack like that when your personality, your social personality has developed. So having said that, let's see what events mark each generation. Gen Zers, our young colleagues and our students at university and secondary school in general, the war on terror, 9/11, another pandemic, the global warming, and if not, tell Greta, the economic crisis, right? The recession after 9/11, and school shootings and insecurity. And it's interesting to know that although maybe in Latin America we don't have school shootings, this question of insecurity and that schools are not places that are secure is the feeling that stays. And of course, here we have to think of Gen Xers, and this generation also started being aware of cybercrime. Now, Gen Zers children to Generation X, as I said, and they are the first ones whose life is like fed with information from YouTube. They are the YouTube generation, and their social media, the one that started developing and then they escaped from, is Facebook and Twitter with 140 characters. Alphas have significantly different life events, but they will continue developing their personality. So far, what we can say is that they have been affected by COVID, that they have earlier digital integration. They are given like a screen, like a pacifier, that they live in paradoxical times in which they have to cope with being isolated from you helps me be with you. I take care of you when I separate from you. Like, this is paradoxical. And they are living with that, or they have gone through that in a normal way. And that's the only reality they have been aware of so far in connection with how bonding can affect large groups. Uncertainty as a norm, and this question of patience and deferred gratification. And by the way, they are the children to millennials. If I have millennial parents here, well, this is where your kids are standing. I want you to remember this. Many things that happen to you, they are not personal. They are not done to you. It's not happening to you. It's not karma. It is generational. So this will be helping you as well. It's not personal. It is generational. Okay, what does primary research say in connection with these generations? Attention with your traffic light. Remember, adapt before your. This is research again. This is what this has been done in Latin America, and this is what they expect. Take a minute to read this. Plenty of practice, fast, quick results, like quick feedback, and understanding that I'm moving on, like if not, I quit. Things that have to do with real life and that are happening right now. The possibility of studying by myself, and this is important, the balance in between the time it requires and the energy it requires and what I learn. So if we can really respond to what they need and what they value, we will be able to develop our students' potential. So this is why generational theory helps choose our classes and design our classes better. So let's go for some generational traits. We have talked about events that mark or that predispose generations to prefer to learn in a certain way. So let's see what are those characteristics that we need to respond to. Let me share this with you. Think about this in this generational spectrum and what we have been rehearsing throughout our lives. As you can see, they are lives and they don't know of a world without this, or if they know, they just know very faintly about the other possibilities, their lives are absolutely different from ours in the sense that their lives are on demand with others. And have a look at that, with delivery. So when you wonder, why is it that each student wants me to repeat the instructions of the exercise or to give an example, or each of them wants my personal feedback? Okay, here is the answer. This is how they see the world. This is their generational filter and the way in which they want to learn. Now, I know your questions and I'm reading your mind. You're saying, why is it that I should know about them and not, and perhaps they shouldn't, they don't know, or they don't want to find out how I want to teach? Well, what I'm telling you is that this is the point where you're starting. Then what you decide to do and how you bond with your students is your own challenge. But the idea is, it is good to tell them about your own generation and what marks your generation and how you feel like working. But don't don't take for granted that they will be having certain habits that, especially if you have been long in the profession, they won't carry. Because remember, on demand with others and with delivery. Then I will tell you how to deal with this. This is their reality. They are digital, global, and visual, and responding to those generational traits. Digital because of their connection with the internet as a source of information, global because of the way in which they connect with the global feeling and the global community, but at the same time, the way in which they play or they compete through video games with people staying or people in other countries and through different language and using different languages. So this is the field that we don't have. And at the same time, they are very visual. That's why look at the way in which I'm presenting this information, which is much more visual than the way in which we tend to present so much information, right? So this helps. And here I will introduce all the words that have been coined to describe these learners. They are so new, so original, so incredible that a lot of words had to be created to describe them. I am letting them appear, but I will start talking about them. For instance, they are task switchers in the sense that they need to do more than one task and that they prefer that. From multitasking to changing from one activity to the other. Short activities work much better than long activities. Micro learners, chunking there, digital, connecting the physical and the digital world. If your activity connects that, that will help. Hacktivists, they are activists online. Prosumers, they produce and consume information. They feel like artists who can feed the net with their useful content. And this has a lot of consequences in the way they approach information. For instance, when we tell them to do research, the difficulties they have when they have to grade information, to organize information, to organize ideas. All this comes from this generational personality. Failure deprived or risk averse. They don't want to fail. And if they see that there is danger of failing, they just chicken out. And why is it so? Because they have been brought up in a protected environment by their parents. Parents who are called helicopter parents and who are there interfering, doing things at times they shouldn't be doing, and who just ask the parties to do what they should be doing. And if not, tell me if you haven't found that workbook, maybe a secondhand workbook purchased and not erased by mommy and daddy. And they come with a workbook that has been bought but not prepared for classes. Well, this is just an example that could explain this characteristic. Crowdsource searchers, in the sense that they look for information as a team and they rely on the recommendations of others. All those acronyms stand for fear of missing out, fear of being offline, fear of messing up, very much related to failure deprived, and do-gooders in the sense that they want to make a positive impact in the world. But at the same time, now this is a good one, I love it. They are not just in case. Learn this because this will help you in the future. Learn this because this will give you useful information in life. This will be useful. You're learning this in secondary because it will be useful at university. No, they're just in time. It has to be useful now. That's why any tool that gives you the possibility of creating just-in-time activities and designing activities on the spot will be very favorable for teaching these generations. They are very individualistic, so working on collaboration is another issue that we have to deal with. And they are authentic-visual in the sense that they pretend to be authentic, and they have to balance artificial and authentic language, attitudes, etc. This is what you see on Instagram when students are like posing for a photograph, like, oh, just I will pretend that I'm doing nothing, but everything is prepared for the final shots. Okay, which one is the one, and you can use the chat, which one is the one that affects your classes the most? Which one is the one you need answers for? Which one is the one you recognize in your classes, or the one you like? This is the part where I read you recognizing these characteristics in your students. You can write on the chat. Absolutely. Task switchers is something that demands me a lot of energy because I have to prepare lots of activities that last very short, but that keep them engaged and that keep recycling what I've been teaching and they've been learning. And this question of failure deprived in my case, this question of cope with failure, right? And this question of giving up also worries me a lot. So I try to find solutions for that. Yeah, Maria Fernanda also feels the same. Absolutely. And by the way, this question of exams, we have to team up with parents. At times, parents do not see the kind of challenge that exams demand for children. And if they don't know, for instance, that they have to sit, the demanding time in attention, the demanding preparation, they may just be absent the day of the exam because they have to take the kid to the dentist or because the kid is not feeling well. So you've been preparing them for 2 years and then the day of the exam comes and parents say, well, but I want them to be happy. And you feel like, I want to choose another profession. But I mean, remember, it's not personal, it is generational. And the good thing is that we can team up with trying to find answers that work with this generation, with people, with teachers from all over the world. All right, so we know the what. This is what we have been discussing. Those are the what's, what we see. We will know why that happens, and then we will find those hows that work really well. So we said that they were risk averse. Always rule in mind, Maslow before Bloom. And when we say Maslow, we are talking about the pyramid of needs, like make sure the classroom is in good condition, that there are, it is student friendly, make sure that they feel safe, like if they are sitting, as Maria Fernanda said, for an international exam, just have those mock exams in which they even may just visit the place where they will be physically evaluated if they are sitting for the exam in person, because that will like cater for Maslow's needs. But at the same time, remember that we have other needs, and these are part of the jokes as well. This question of, well, those are 21st century needs for these students. And I think it's a good joke, but I feel like crying at times because it is true. Sometimes you cannot go on with your classes because of students who run out of batteries. But we have to learn to cope with that and to think creatively as well. And talking about the pyramid of needs and their needs, look at the number of things they have, the number of apps. In particular, Generation Alpha is the app generation, and how each app tries to respond to a certain need. And at the same time, look at that, how visual and graphic this is. How many of those do you use? How many of those do you know? Well, again, how separated at times we are and how technology separates from our students. Neuroscience, this one is a good one, so get ready. Are you ready? Give me a yes and I continue, because this one is one of those that will just break your head.
Yes.
I see a yes coming there. All right. And this is scientific as well. 26 industry generations have been proved to be through studying moments in which students decide to make certain moves, decide to take certain decisions like getting a driving license or on enrolling for university or how they do that. 26 are the new 18. So if you feel that your students are immature, that they are different from their predecessors, you are right. And this has an explanation, a generational and neuroscientific explanation. Maturity has to do with risk-taking. Remember that we said they were, I can read your minds. We said they were risk-averse, that they didn't want to take risks, they were protected. Therefore, their prefrontal cortex does not develop, and they need to take risks slowly. Give you an example. We all know about generational readiness, but what does it mean to be generationally ready with these generations? How can we measure risk? And if we don't measure risk, remember that they are not bilingual, they are bilingual. They just quit when they feel they can't cope with that. So how can we accommodate for their needs? We can provide lots of model work. ChatGPT could be a way in which students could be provided with lots of model work and dealing with lots of pre-activities to finally get them to creatively write their own pieces. For instance, if you're at university, chunking material also helps not having bilinguals, but having bilingual students. This idea of revising, reusing, and recycling tasks, because they familiarize with the way of doing things. And you give those tasks a little twist. Whenever there is let's see, a frame of work, whenever there is a structure, this generation that lives with change as a normal thing feels more confident. Using graphic organizers works wonders, and routines as well. Assigning peer tutors, like this would be the scaffolding provided by a peer who is more able, who can work with me, who can show me how to do it. The I do, we do, you do routine, working with rubrics that are a perfect scaffold, and establishing routines, as I said, like 3 before me, think, pair, share, or any other structure of work that can be used, for instance, for collaborative work. Now, the vocabulary that you should have in your classes. Yet, when students who are failure deprived come up to you and they say, I can't do it, I don't know, I can't write, I don't know spelling, get them to say yet. Okay, come up to me and say yet. Tell me that again, because that is the way in which you create the abracadabra, the mantra word for a flexible mindset. And the moment you start seeing how, the moment you start using yet, your perception changes and you feel more empowered. So start listening to yourselves and start listening to your students and get them to reframe their sentences that do not bring a yet. So you don't know how to write a certain word yet. Try. That's the word you say. Can I do it? Try. Because if we are learning from mistakes, we always try. So this is the green light again. Get them to think when they provide an answer, more than getting just finding answers. Their questions are very valid. And once they make an assertion, let's see if you can get 5 whys after that. Like a certain revolution was not useful, was not efficient, was ineffective. Okay, tell me why. And once you get an answer, go deeper into that and tell me why again. And this has to do with the philosophical approach to critical thinking, all right? And then, and this one works with younger students and with older students, when they come up to you and they say, I cannot do it, I haven't understood anything, I don't know how to do it. Okay, tell me what you can do. Don't tell me what you cannot do, that doesn't help me. Tell me what you can do. Okay, so you don't know how to write this word. Which words do you know how to write, or which part of the word you are sure about? Are you okay with this? Before we move on, are these tips interesting? Tell me your favorite one. Which one are you planning to use as you go right into your classes? The yet, the try, the why, or the say it positively? Pilar, I'm sorry, I'm going back. I'm reading that you're saying there that, yes, 26 are the new 18, and that explains why the work you correct, the attitude with which work is approached is different. And this is why also many Gen Zers are experiencing a lot of stress and trauma and depression, because they feel very responsible for the world, and they are being launched into adult life with a degree perhaps, and they feel totally unprepared for real life. This is the reason why it has improved things happening like this all over the world. I love it that you like this question of saying it positively. I love all of them, and honestly, they work, and they work with you too. So I insist on this. Use technology, use all the possibilities that you have in hand to prepare or to prepare your classes, yes, and this video game approach in which you chunk the learning bites and you have micro learning, and you work like not one single drill, but lots of drills that go deeper into the idea and that allow them to learn by making mistakes in the same way that they are used to learning through their video games, and that give them, these drills give them lots of feedback time and time again, with a lot of flexibility, of course, because they need this to handle their own learning. We saw that in the studies that I shared. And of course, they need your feedback to feed forward. Problems, definitely, if we're talking about technology, and this is the part where you are the one who can plan for this ahead. You may have connectivity issues. You may not be very familiar with the game style learning design. And perhaps you can also bear this in mind, which is how to make do if technology fails. If not, look at this. Yeah, it may fail. So if you fail to plan, plan to fail. I'm talking about technology and how it has affected us and changed generations. Can you imagine the answer to this question? Can you think of the way in which this meme can be finished? Ta-da! It was, you didn't read it. Now, these generations are the TLDR generations, too long, didn't read. But there is another thing that is coming out in the most recent studies. And you said, well, I sent you an email. I used your classroom. I used the platform. and you'd never read it. Yeah, this is one of the ways in which this generation works. So the idea is team up, get somebody to tell them, have a class chat or a class group to support this, because this may happen. But there is another thing which is very noticeable with this generation that you should bear in mind, which is this. They are the too long didn't watch generation. So fewer than or shorter than 2 minutes, if possible, and in a very fast speed. So we are thinking about videos. Too long didn't watch. The rule is less and more. So for videos, 2 minutes or less. Look at that, there is a wonderful Spanish there. Allowing them to have 2 or more attempts, and above all, something that allows them to speed up, right? And you will see that most apps, like the one you use, Lore, for your videos, show how much time you save. Now, for you, that is fantastic or meaningless. But what does it mean when you're a student and that is the only reality you know, when all around you, everything saves your time? And you can have that, or you're reading an article and the article reads, it takes 2 minutes to read. I never just thought about that, the time it took me. Now, what we have to wonder is, well, what is the effect when you are wearing different glasses and you don't know of a world without that? Okay, generational perspective. Gen Zers, we said, are phygital, physical and real world, and they are global. Get them to follow those Instagrammers that will add to your classes. Suggest the Instagrammers. It's not that they follow, they have to follow the Instagrammers you suggest, and that is part of the class, and you follow them as well, and that will enrich your connections. And that will give them a sense of authenticity, which is what they need, and will, in a way, to respond to their global needs. Give them real-world tasks, whether preparing TED Talks, YouTube tutorials, collaborating with the Sustainable Development Goals, as booktubers, making reviews of your wondrous cities, preparing games with your IT colleagues. All that works a lot. Podcasting. And by the way, using Google Lens in the classroom. I won't be going deeper into that. You can just find out what the uses of Google Lens in the classroom can be. That helps a lot with these generations to give them what they want to get in the classes. And by the way, if we're talking about artificial intelligence and we are worried about ChatGPT, okay, let's do it the other way around. Take the MIT experiment and that is collecting information, and make them participate, providing information to the creation or for the creation of artificial intelligence, like this wondrous experiment that is being carried out by the MIT in connection with moral values, morality, which is called Moral Machine. So again, another characteristic and how we can respond to it. We said that they were visual. Screenagers and, they are screenagers, and this is called the great screen age, in which they see their lives through the screen. And look at this to see how far away humanity was from this at the beginning. Think of a book in which 640 pages had 4 colored just plates. And people understood that and could cook all the same. But this is the transformation, and I'm showing you this visually, of the cooking side. There is not only that we have a great chef, but they are the ones who show how they cook. So how is that affecting the way they perceive and understand reality? How is this giving you lots of possibilities to create real life opportunities and real life activities that will challenge your students a lot? Okay, patterns of reading, and this is another consequence. I know I'm giving you a lot of information, but you can watch again the video at your own leisure and see which aspects you want to go deeper into. Look at this, which is taken from an exam. Who was it that needed to, okay, let me move on and then I'll go back to this. This has to do with exams. Sometimes we see, well, what is the difficulty? What are the difficulties that they have to face when they sit for an exam? Look at this. It has been studied that people who learn to read through printed pages develop a Z reading pattern. That is, they pass their eyes through the text in a Z-like style. Whereas the youngest generations that learn to read and read a lot from their screens develop, because they scroll down to get more information, an F reading pattern. Now, what does that mean? That perhaps when they come up to you and they say, I cannot find information, it is true. Because of the way, the habit they have of reading one way and not the other. So what I suggest here is, like, tell them to focus on, to imagine that F and to look for the spaces, the empty spaces there, and to check if they haven't missed the information there. And you train them to do that so that they can develop the missing skill. Stories work with this generation because stories are visual, and they develop, they just generate hormones that help memory, response, and empathy. So the more you work with that, the more this generation will feel they are being given the tools they need. And talking about stories and heroes there, remember, no generation is better or worse. This generation values their parents and considers them their heroes. They don't break away from them. On the contrary, they are the ones who they consider their models and guides. And when we talk about generational catastrophe, like the ones some people tend to see in this post-pandemic world, just let's use this maximizer that never fails. I believe in you. Keep telling your students that you believe in them. Like Sir Ken Robinson believed in us when he said that there was no system of education in the world that was reliably better than its teachers, because we kept the system when everything was failing. This is what we have been doing, a very visual way to summarize. Just have a look at my slides and tell me which number is or was your favorite one. Which number do you prefer as your inspiration for your next class? 28 for Pilar. Hannah, 33. By the way, what you can do with this, my bye-bye slide, which can be your bye-bye slide in any lesson when you have to present content like this, you can play with that. You can ask your students to list down the numbers they remember. Then they can do like theme pair, share with their partners. And in that way, you can expand and rebuild the class. And that is very generationally friendly. And you will see that learning is enhanced in that way. You can say, well, who can be the expert on a certain slide or a certain topic? And that helps increase their learning, maximize their potential, and recycle your class in a very generational friendly way. All right. Again, your questions, your life experiences, your needs, or your queries, or your solutions, you can find me there, my professional learning network. Some of the books I've read. And last but not least, ready for your questions. Thank you very much for your attention and your participation. They made it possible.